Okay, today is a very special day, and me and Carson are doing a guest in January. We said all of last year that we would get more guests on. This year, we're hitting the ground running. I'm very excited to have Daniel Crocker, ex-head of content at Brez. This guy is a killer. I had a call with him beforehand. I said to him, look, you've got to get on the pod. We've got to chat about how you approach content. Honestly, super pumped for this. Daniel, how you doing, man? You good?
Doing good. Excited to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So the whole episode today, we want to talk about what brands get wrong in content, how actually organic can be the flywheel that goes into paid, and just kind of giving some tactics and strategies. So, I mean, to kind of kick off proceedings, what trends are we seeing on content? The big one I'm seeing is AI slideshows everywhere on TikTok.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I mean, I think the biggest thing that kind of underpins all of this is that for years now, paid and organic were treated as these separate channels, and organic was just kind of almost like a landing page to prove that your brand existed. And a lot of brands, even to this date, are just posting like, hero shots of their product and whatever. Maybe they have a lot of followers, but it's not really connecting or engaging with their audience. And then on paid, they would actually try and make things that are, engaging and would capture the consumer. And, as the feeds are kind of merging, sometimes it's harder to tell what is an ad and what isn't. It's important to kind of treat both of these channels as the same thing. Use organic as a testing ground for paid, because organic now for a lot of brands is sometimes the first acquisition channel before they even spend on paid ads. So, really above all, like obviously there, AI is affecting things, and, burner accounts where people are just posting the same thing with a slightly different caption, like you've been testing in the background. But yeah, but really I think like that's the main trend that more people, I think, were waking up to last year, but still a lot of brands need to, because honestly, I don't think there's a reason to be wasting so much ad budget on testing when you can kind of already figure out what works and what doesn't for free to some extent.
I mean, Daniel, sorry, Carson.
I was going to say, it's like a lot of it nowadays is just organic's the validation point and paid is just the scaling point, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious what your guys' philosophy was at Brez. Was, were you heavily testing organically and then based off of that scaling, or were you guys doing like every organic post we put out there, we're going to put as an ad and just try it?
So it was a little bit of both. I wish that the paid and organic could have been a little more synced, and I think that that's something that they're going to work on now. I'm not with them anymore. I left 2 months ago, but I think that's what they're working on now. But part of it was that the Brez executive team are all like e-commerce, paid advertising guys. And that's their background. A lot of them owned agencies. And so they were a lot more focused and had more expertise in that. So most of my role was really just focusing on paid content. But what we did, along with me just kind of, going out there and learning what I could, even internally, like some of our, best performing organic posts would then be the best ads. I think the problem is with a brand like Brez that's so sort of founder led, if you don't build the company around making sure that founder can produce content regularly, you can kind of lose voice. And so that was part of the difficulty that we had. And honestly, like, I don't blame him. We were growing like crazy. I was employee number 10 and now they're like 50 or 60 people. But that is, kind of one of the problems. Like if you're doing organic, the consistency is key, and having those characters that are going to be featured repeatedly can be tough, especially if you start out, with it being the founder and then their time is kind of fractured.
No, I mean, I think as well, what's very clear to me now it's interesting. You've got all these brands that, again, you were saying, the executive team were all the kind of, the agencies, the e-com brands are kind of like 2022, 2024, 2023 sense of, it's a different game, and the game has changed now. I mean, I think the really exciting thing is, if you can get really good at organic content, then you can have such an advantage on so many e-com brands, because they just don't, it's not a part of their strategy because it's something they have to learn. Not saying they won't learn it, as you were saying, like they're going to build that more into their strategy, but it's very difficult for brands, I think, that have been taught a certain way how to approach the funnel, because it's always been paid, organic was a side thought, as you were saying, they'd take a photo of their product and be like, buy it. There'll be no emotional tie to it. And now you're seeing that the algorithm will kill it. It won't push it. When you were looking for content formats and pillars, how were you approaching that?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that, at least at Breeze, that we had is just like an internal, just like Instagram DM group chat. And I feel like any organization should have that, whether you're an agency or a brand or whatever, and just send stuff back and forth and bounce off ideas. Especially with now, the clients I work with currently, like I always already exists and adding your spin onto it. So I think that's really important.
I think the big problem is I've had it before where you bookmark all this inspiration.
But
You have
yes,
all this stuff ready to go. And it's like,
inspiration.
they go like, what do you choose to actually go for?
Yeah.
I've always found it interesting how companies have approached that.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, so, if it's organic, if it has, good engagement, views, things like that. But also, I'm sure you guys have spent time doing this, but like the meta ads manager is also very helpful. I saw, obviously, there's still, some of the brands or agencies will play the game where they'll keep something on at like a low spend to like try and trick competitors. So you can't trust it 100%. But they did just recently add a feature where it says low impression count now, which is probably not like a surefire way, because if you had an ad running for a while and it could have a lot of impressions, but not sales. But I thought that was interesting because that definitely kind of breaks down the walls a bit and lets you understand what's performing for other brands and what's not. But really, it's just, I find myself in a constant battle of like trying to expose myself to more stuff without doom scrolling for half the day. So I feel like that's everyone's
I feel like
struggle.
that's the battle in this industry, is like we're all scrolling at certain points during our lunch break, and it ends up getting to 2:30 in the afternoon because we're like, oh wait, this was work, but I kind of forgot about the work part.
Yeah, let me just look at this account real quick, and then 40 minutes go by.
I can give you a great example of this, right? There was some content that I did, right? And one got 180,000 views, which was sick. And then one got, I think, 60,000 views. And I looked at the back end of the cohort quality, right? And the one that got 60,000 views, even though it had less views, the intent was stronger. I think that's so important for people to understand that when you're making content, it's just essentially saying, what am I optimizing for here? Like, are we optimizing for reach? Is it really top of funnel content where maybe there's a lead magnet at the end of it? Or are you trying to sell, which then you need to make it very high intent content, right? You have a problem, call up the ICP, and then kind of like a bit of confirmation bias, and then just push it to them. But I don't know, I think lots of brands, the concept is building a show, isn't it? Build a show, build a repeatable format that you can scale.
Yeah. Have you seen the built credit card show Roomies on TikTok?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Carson, have you heard of it? Oh, I'll let Daniel explain it, but it's fantastic.
It's basically like a fully produced mini internet show. I think it's on TikTok, and I know it's on TikTok. I don't know if it's on Instagram as well, but like after they posted their first episode, like I forget when it came out, if it was like mid last year or so, but like they got like 40,000 followers literally from the first episode. It just kept snowballing. But it's like one episode a week. It's about, I think, like a girl who moves to New York City or something, and just like making friends and kind of like the whole, in your 20s thing. But yeah, it's really interesting. And it almost reminds me of, this was kind of like a thesis I've had for the past year, but have you guys seen Mad Men before?
Unironically, my favorite show.
Yeah, no, it's in my top 3 as well. But it kind of reminds me when in some of the episodes they would like help these bigger brands either like sponsor some like big sitcom, or they would design a show around a certain brand so that it was like the content wasn't anything that conflicted. And I feel like we're almost kind of circling back multiple decades later because everyone is so fatigued with ads. Like now you need to find, more of a point of like entertainment. But yeah, I mean, I really think it kind of signals that most consumer brands now are also going to have to become, media companies as well to some degree. Like you really need a media arm unless, you're VC backed or something where you can just blow cash at ads until it sticks.
Luke and I have that conversation a lot, and we think like every business now it has to become a media company of its own because you have to own your channels. You have to be able to be the distributor to whatever platform or, vehicle of distribution means possible. And I think that it goes for not just the typical brands of CPG and, just D2C, but also agency side. Like you see a lot of agencies neglect the fact that they need to be their own media company. I think
Yeah.
it's so important for everybody nowadays to get on organic content. And like we see it all the time. I mean, people do it for I had a call with a guy yesterday who was like, I really want to, get into content. And I was like, then just start. Like
Yeah.
you just got to go. And the consistency part is the hardest part of it. But I'm curious for you, like when you were at Brez, right? What was the biggest thing you guys would look for in terms of the organic content being a high performer?
Yeah. So, I mean, mostly off of views, really. Like that, I think that's the most telling. As we know, like the followers aren't as important these days with, kind of the algorithm based feeds. But I think views and comments are the most telling. And for us, like, I think, by the time I left, we probably had like 60 or 70,000 followers on Instagram. Really, even with a smaller following, I would say like anything above 20,000 views is probably going to rip
Yeah.
on paid ads as well. But obviously, it's worth testing anything, especially like I find a lot of it is just kind of gut uh, feeling over anything. That was really kind of the benchmark that I saw for stuff that would also perform well paid.
You know what? There's quite a lot of tension for me right now in looking at. Like, if you said to me, would you rather have an Instagram account that's got 70,000 followers or a burner account where you don't have to worry too much about brand, but you can test so much quicker? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know which one I would choose. Because don't get me wrong, you need them. You need both of them in your own way. But I mean, I think there's so much power. I mean, as I'm discovering kind of over the last month by just being able to kind of post and discover formats really quickly. And then when you find the winning angle, you just iterate on. I mean, for God's sake, I think my best performing hook is I love Gen Z because what do you mean there's an ad library that has free winning ads? Like,
Hmm.
it makes zero sense. It just
Yeah.
prints. And I just think, I don't know, there's that tension between like brands and kind of paid, like when you're looking at organic. And I don't know, what do you think about like, if you had to choose between an account that has 70,000 followers but are quite rigid in brand guidelines and whatever, or one where you can just rip and test quicker, where would you pitch yourself?
Well, something interesting to bring up. I don't know if you guys follow Oren John on he's like pretty big on Instagram, LinkedIn, all platforms, but I really like his stuff and he had a video recently that was talking about like he thinks that more brands are going to have testing accounts and some already do. So, I think certainly that will kind of be a strategy especially for the ones that are more protective of their brand as well as trial reels too.
That's what I
That's
was gonna
huge.
ask next. Like, do you think it's worth it to just stick to trial reels for maybe smaller brands? Because I think it's also dependent on, the brand, like you're saying.
Yeah. But I think the overarching thing is that if you want to win online, I think you need to drop your brand guidelines a bit. And that's something just purely on the paid side that was kind of a constant battle at Breeze because Breeze does have a really strong brand and a beautiful story and all that. And, it totally makes sense that you want to protect that. But at the same time, like the way that social media works is just a lot different. And even Instagram, which is generally known as like the more aesthetic and curated platform, like if you scroll reels now, it starts to look like TikTok. It's a lot of like random off the cuff stuff. And if you come in like too produced or, just flashing the product too much, like it screams ad, even if it's not a paid asset. And people are just going to scroll. So, it's really important to find a balance, but I don't know, also understand that like maybe social media isn't the channel anymore to be overly branded. I feel
Yeah,
like
well,
that's more email.
I agree, and I think another thing too that people kind of forget is nobody really gives a shit about your brand, right? Like the company, the
Yeah.
founder, the CEO, everybody will always care more about the brand than the consumer does.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget that, especially very small brands. They're like, "Oh, it's all about our brand." It's like you don't have a brand yet.
Yeah. And I've also seen a good point. of like, you can go back and do that later, you know, but like, you don't want to focus on that in, you know, the first few years when it's going to hurt your growth.
You just need sales.
But I think everyone just sees like, you know, a Simon Sinek clip talking about Apple and they're like, we want our company
Yeah.
talked about that
Or they see
or talked about like that
they talk
someday.
about like Nike and Coca-Cola, and it's like, you're not a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, you
Yeah,
don't
that's
have a
decades
brand to
old.
protect.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though, Daniel, isn't it? That's the thing. It's a company that started a year in. You're not going to build a brand equity like Apple did. It's taken decades of work, and it's
Yeah.
taken, and like you're not going to get to that point. But like until you got, it's all about time in the market, right? Because you just want to be there long enough where familiarity can get involved and people get used to your product. And I think people have got that misconstrued with what a brand is. I think a brand is just, as you were saying on our call, it's like you just, it's an association, right? And I think people get too tied up on, it's got to look like that color scheme and it's got to be that. Like, they don't care. Does it solve their problem? What is the outcome that they get from using your product? And is it good enough that they'll buy again and it works from kind of the LTV kind of retention play? Like that, if you're building an e-com brand, that is like the fundamentals. And content is just the accelerator that helps everything in the business. I'm very bullish on content. I mean, it's the
I got another question for you, Daniel.
Yeah.
When you guys would create content, right? Like, where, I know we have like the certain Instagram group chat now, and you guys send ideas to each other. But when you guys were coming up with content ideas, maybe it's now, maybe it's when you were at Brez, whatever. What are the things you're looking at in order to create content, other than just like, reels that are out there? Like, are you looking at certain things in real life? Are you looking at just like the product and seeking inspiration there? How does that work? Because there's certain ways that Luke and I have talked about this and we do it. And I'm curious how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things. The first is, I think finding as many emotional angles as possible is going to lead to success, and anything that feels a bit vulnerable. This was like on the easier side for Breeze because it's an alcohol alternative, and our founder had a great story about how he stopped drinking, and we would constantly get these messages from customers saying like, you saved my marriage, you changed my life, this and that. So I think that's really low hanging fruit, especially when it's a product like that that can make such an impact. So, a lot of those. And then, the other thing is, I know, people don't always like to compare to other products or brands because they feel it's like it cheapens their own. But I think a lot of people are kind of visual learners. And I think, making comparisons to products that are already out there and, as Luke is saying, like solving their problem is the other thing too. That's why people are going to listen.
I know, I agree, and I think that's why it's so important and when I'm talking to brands, it's not really about, I don't really worry too much about what their brand is. It's what is your frame of reference to other products in the market. I think
Yeah.
you should spend more time on differentiation than like what your color guidelines look like and your tone of voice. Like, it's all about, how is someone? It's all about the consideration set, isn't it? If I'm in the mood to buy a functional non-alcoholic beverage, does Breeze come up in that consideration set? It's like why Liquid Death is such a great example of just, they didn't like, their whole thing was like, everyone hates advertising. It's all, everyone's fatigued from it. Let's just do really outrageous things, right?
Yeah.
I think they're a fantastic example of it.
Yeah.
So I think what I know a lot of our viewers would be very interested in. We had a call with someone called Vince a couple of weeks ago, and he's building like an underwear brand for kind of very organic underwear. And he was talking about, and the question he came up with was, when you're looking from going for organic to paid, do you change anything in the content when you're moving it to paid, or do you just run it as it is? What's your view on that, Daniel?
Mhm. I personally wouldn't change much. I think, especially if you're launching it on the same platform, but just through paid. The only thing is, doing something with copy, like a lot of the smarter brands will have something in the caption to kind of get you to comment and maybe have like an auto responder or something. But I personally like, unless the only caveat would be if it's like Black Friday or something like that, just adding a bit of text over it to give the viewer that context. But otherwise, I think it's good when your ad looks as organic as possible. And I don't think you really need to like soup it up or brand it, anymore.
I mean, I mean, it's interesting for me because I know, and Carson were talking about this kind of just like in a research on like a research call, and we both kind of getting to the same conclusion now where in 2026, it's either it's very ugly, it's very raw, it's very native to whatever kind of channel you're targeting, or it's very polished, very direct response. It's a very, very good app. Like I feel like the middle ground now, you just cannot live there. You
Yeah.
can't be, and I don't know, like I'm intrigued kind of what your views are on that statement.
I think I would generally agree with that. And I think also, I don't know if we talked about this on our last call, but stuff like AI UGC too is just I mean, UGC has already been cheapened over the years, but because it's going to make this like very perfectly lighted and whatever looking videos, I think again, that kind of proves your point that you can't sit in the middle because now it's going to be seen as authentic if it's rough around the edges, or people will be impressed if you take the time to kind of add that extra production value, but in a way that's entertaining and not
See,
just
and
salesy. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's such a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you've got the super raw and organic feeling stuff that UGC creators do, and it does really well, right, for direct response. But then you see these short film type of advertisements from brands like Late Checkout, from Manners, from these semi bigger brands, and they do a great job of telling a story and making an ad that really helps people, I guess, fit into the lifestyle and the emotions that the brand's trying to convey, right? So those tend to blow up, right? Like Manners did one the other day that I think has already done like 400,000 likes
Wait,
or something.
is that the golf brand?
Yes.
Okay. I literally saw that like 20 minutes or like
Yeah.
right before I hopped on. Yeah.
It's unreal. They crushed it.
Yeah. I
And
thought that
then
was really interesting.
like Late Checkout, I don't know if you know them. They're an apparel brand too. They did the ad with Josh Hutcherson last year and this year, and they won
Mm,
a Cannes Lion for it. But like I think
interesting.
those have their place as well, and they do well. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of like finding out what the purpose for it is and how you're gonna make the creative direction fit so that people give a shit.
I mean, and also just to add on to that as well, like if you look at, some of the kind of modern fashion brands coming in, the ones that sell towards like a high luxury, customer group. What they're doing really smart is they open with a very lo-fi hook, and then it becomes hi-fi in production, right?
Yeah.
Because the first 3 seconds are so critical. And I think, as I mean, look, we're a group of very young men in the sense of we've been brought up where if we see anything corporate, we're just scrolling, right? We're kind of wired. So that's why, for example, you can get really nuanced. Like, if you have any title, title hooks on your videos, having it like uncapitalized is such a little tweak can do great performance outcomes, right? But it doesn't feel like it feels like off the cuff, very lo-fi. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people need to spend more time really thinking about what is that first 3 seconds of a video? What emotion do I want to portray in that first 3 seconds? You can get them past the first 3 seconds. And I think that's 80% of the work, in my view. It's so important that
Yeah.
hook. Do you
Have
agree?
you seen, yeah, that it reminds me of, have you seen a few brands have tried or have done this style where they start with, it looks like a Snapchat video, like it has a little caption. It's like, what
Yep,
is
yep.
this dude doing? And
Yeah,
then it
that's
like
what's my concept.
And then it cuts
switches.
into what's that towel company that just has blown up with that ad? Oh my god, it's gonna kill me. There's a new towel company that these guys like our age started, and
Yeah,
they
I think I know what you're talking about
yeah, where
because
they
he
dump the
doesn't like
mud on the
something
kid.
get,
Yeah,
yes.
yes,
Yeah.
I forget what it's called,
Yeah.
which is not a good sign for them, but still. I think like that's
Yeah.
that's a great point, Luke. I also this might be a hot take, and I'm a firm believer in this. I don't think production quality really matters. I think it's just about the content that matters, right? Like
Yeah.
I've seen both work. It's not a matter of like, oh, high production, people are just going to immediately scroll. It's like no, because if Manners Golf did that, I wouldn't have scrolled, right?
Yeah.
Like I stayed and watched that whole video because it was entertaining and the content, the creative was great. But people get so caught up in this idea that you have to have ugly ads and high production. It's like just make the content good. Who cares what it looks like?
Yeah.
You know?
I think to add on to that, I think what I would say is, again, I think the reason why you probably found that content engaging is because the format and the packaging of that content resonated with you. And I think for example, when I'm looking for inspiration, it's such a, I mean, I don't remember what his name was, but it's a really great hack where when you're scrolling through, just look at the amount of shares a piece of content's got. Because
That's
no
what I
video,
look at a lot.
yeah, no video in the history of the platform has gone viral with no shares. And you can tell very quickly if they put paid behind it, an organic post, if the shares are not correlated. You know what I mean? Right?
Well, because I
Yeah.
wanted to ask Daniel that as well, because Luca, before we hopped on, I showed you the post I had yesterday of the Mad Men
Yeah.
post that has like 19 shares and 2 comments. So Daniel, like when you look at your guys' metrics, I know you're saying like, you know, views and impressions are a big one. Do you look and take any data from shares, like what that helps with, or what you guys are, you know, gonna do forward or do with something moving forward if it has a lot of shares? Like what is kind of the metric there?
Yeah. So again, like we didn't focus as much on there wasn't as much connection between like organic and paid at Breeze. It was more just like if something popped off, we'd launch it. But I know, you know, from, you know, my research and stuff, like shares are also super important. And I've even seen people talk about just like having a few friends where after you post something, just send it to, because even just those first few initial ones can kind of get that rolling. But yeah, I mean, shares are super important as well.
Because I've heard, God, I don't forget who the head of Instagram is. He's talked about this before, but he says shares are a great metric to look at because that's what's going to increase your impression count. So the more
Yep.
shares you get, the more the video is being spread, and the more people want, or the more the algorithm is going to push it. Not just because
Yeah.
people are engaging, but because they're sending it to more people who will send it to more people.
Yeah.
And to add on to that as well, Carson and Daniel, I know of, I'm not going to name drop them because it's slightly cheeky, but it's one of these kind of AI consumer apps. What they do is when their UGC program is going, what they'll often do is when it reaches 1,000 views, they'll get other accounts in their UGC program to share, comment, and whatever. And then what they found when they do that, it then, as you said, it kind of hyperdrives it, right?
Hmm.
It's such a weird thing, and you know, and I think the best learning for anyone that's starting out content is just bloody post, because you'll
Yeah.
start to learn little hacks that you would never have known if you hadn't have posted, right? You know, and I think so many people just need to start, like, and it's just compound effect. And I think some people overwhelm themselves because they think they need to, you know, yes, you got to spend like it's not something that you do in a 10-minute slot. Like you need to really it's all about the research. Find the formats that are resonating in your audience, replicate as much as you can, and then also add your own spin to it. Right? I mean, Carson his content, he's very good at that on Instagram. I mean, he's grown like, because you've got the Mad Advertising page where he grew that by using great advertising videos. He built an audience that's engaged in advertisement and finds it interesting, and he can use that to push people through his funnel into his newsletter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's very top of funnel content from Carson. Just wanted to plug you there, Carson. Just saying, it's a great job, you know? So what I'm intrigued to ask you, Daniel, now is, are there any organic strategies that you've got when looking for format diversification? Because we know now Meta, you know, the bottom of the triangle in the way is formats, right? If you run the same ad over and over again and change headlines and page, you're going to get crucified for it.
Mm-hmm.
In organic, I'm finding that isn't to be true. It's what I'm finding on my own account. But for you, when you're looking kind of paid and organic, how are you approaching format diversification? How do you approach that?
Yeah. I mean, especially when talking to like brands that I'm working with, like, but even just general advice for creators, I think it's really important, like, make things that you actually like to make, but also that, as we talked about before, can be repeatable. And I think the guy, you're familiar with Nectar hard seltzers,
Yeah.
right? Have you seen that brand? Yeah.
Very good.
I forget the founder of that brand, but he's been pretty active on LinkedIn recently, and he had a great post the other day that just like, I don't make anything unless I think it can be a repeatable content format, because otherwise like it's a waste of time. Like everything needs to be able to turn into a series if it does well. And so I think it's always like trying to find that sort of middle ground of like low lift, but also, you know, like jumps out and looks a little bit different, and something that you can keep on doing
Yeah.
repeatedly.
So in a way, you're saying that what separates organic content that then that kind of could scale into paid is the fact that when you're making organic, it's something that's repeatable. It's a repeatable format where it's not a one-off.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. That's
Because
interesting.
otherwise, like, you just get, even the most creative people, you just get so fatigued, like, trying to come up with a brand new concept every time. And if you can just kind of iterate on it a little bit every week, you're going to have a much easier time.
Yeah.
And I mean, at Breeze, we always said like great artists steal, you know? It's like
Honestly,
maybe
steal
sounds a
away.
little scummy, but like, yeah, I really think, like you
Well,
just need to go out there and look for inspiration
I
to
fully
try to be
agree.
original.
I fully agree, and I think actually the biggest unlock that I found is when you just create a burner account, or as people jokingly say on TikTok, like a secret account. Just engage with all the brands that are your competitors. Let the feed come to you, and then you're going to beat 99% of the marketers because you know
Yeah,
exactly what's resonating at that time. And I think what drives me up the wall with people when they approach organic and paid research is that they think it's static. It's dynamic. The market is always changing, right?
yeah,
Breakthrough advertising, that's the belief, right? The market will change its sophistication, right? And I think so many people don't realize that. They think, oh, I've done a research doc, I'm done. I mean, I can imagine for you,
yeah.
Daniel, you spend a lot of your time researching because it's probably where the biggest, you know, biggest alpha is for you. Because having the research, understanding, the market that one of your clients that you're working with, etc., it just gives you the best alpha in my view. Sorry, I ranted there, but I thought it had to be said. I'm just trying to think. So we've kind of talked about organic. We've very much talked about organic. We've talked about kind of how that feeds into paid. What's your view now, kind of looking at TikTok Shop and the UGC programs? Because we mentioned at the beginning
Yeah,
of the AI slideshows, and I'm seeing them everywhere right now.
yeah,
Like,
yes,
you bloat my face. It's all about the transformation because that's become commoditized because you can do before and after like that, right?
yeah.
What's your views on this?
Yeah. Yeah, the AI slideshow stuff is funny because like once you know about it, you can't unsee it. And I just remember like the first few months when I didn't know that it was fake, I was like, huh, like I keep seeing all these slideshows, and the one that I saw the most was for that app. I think it's called Go Viral or something where you can
Man.
like upload your video
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
all started. I can't believe I fell for it so many times, but it was some girl and it was all like, I just left TikTok, but these are the 5
Yeah.
growth hacks. Like, if you want to know, and everyone's trying to become it's so smart because everyone's trying to become a creator. So you're working off that psychology.
The
Everyone's trying to
aspiration.
post videos. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I want to learn like from someone that was there, which I mean, to some degree is deceptive advertising. If it's, well, not only not a real person, but they did not work
They've
at
doubled
TikTok.
down.
Yeah,
But
They've doubled
that's
down.
very
yeah,
false advertising. Somebody
Yeah.
reported that to the FTC. They're screwed.
yeah.
But yeah. It's like,
You
I
know
love
So
it. Yeah.
I think about this a lot now. How much is AI going to kind of increase consumer dissatisfaction and actually introduce the FTC to more
Oh,
businesses and create more problems, right? Like, I personally am on the side of I think there will be regulations coming, and I think
yeah,
there's going to have to be. I mean, you kind of look at Sora and you're like, okay, they have the watermark, they're doing it right. Gemini with their image gen, they've got the watermark on there, so it's like, how much are they going to have that stuff and flag it as AI so that people know that it's not real?
I mean, it's just going to come down to enforcement because everything that I've read so far, it's kind of hard to tag a video on the back end that it's AI. And even if so, if you just re-export it somewhere
Yeah.
else, like that's gone. The same as like I figured out for LinkedIn posts. I don't use AI images that often, but when I do, if I like generate it in Chat GPT, I'll just like re-export it from Photoshop and it won't get tagged from LinkedIn and then it will perform better. So it's really hard and unless I haven't, I'm missing something for the platforms to be able to tell. So it just comes down to enforcement. Like it's the same thing. I think the biggest, risks for consumers, well, I guess mostly for brands are one AI generated content because the FTC already clearly outlines that like it is deceptive, it is illegal, you can't do that unless maybe you explicitly disclaim, but I still don't think you're allowed to use fake people. And then the other thing too that it feels like people are just shamelessly doing now is using copyrighted music. Like I will see ads with like Mac Miller songs or Tate McRae songs. And I'm like, this is so
I
egregious. Like
there
these
was
are
a
like very well-known artists and just in the ads library, like
I've
I
insane.
saw there was a conversation about that on Twitter last week that I was watching, and it was like,
I have a
I don't
story
know
about
how
that.
people are just blatantly ripping this music and getting away with it, and like people don't know. It's like for the most part nobody sees it. That's the problem.
Well,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I had at the early days of Big, I had a conversation with one of the biggest kind of like music libraries in the world. like it's Epidemic Sounds, I think they're called, like a very big sound company. And he was telling me, there was one of the people there working there was telling me a great story about how, for example, Hilton, they did some UGC content. They didn't look at what music their content creators were doing. The music studios saw it, they didn't react. Hilton started scaling up this program, and then Hilton hit with a $600 million fine, because for every video the content creator used without permission for that song, it gets multiplied. So
Yeah.
I can guarantee these music studios are watching, and then they're going to pounce at some point. I can guarantee.
Yeah.
Because then they make
Well,
more
if
money,
you
it multiplies.
if you look up Crumble, that happened with them, Crumble Cookies. They got hit
Yeah,
with
yeah.
like a $20 million lawsuit for just, again, not even on paid. This was just like trending sounds on organic social for TikTok and Instagram. So I think it's really tough though, because when you do it on paid, like
You're profiting.
you're being an idiot. Like that's everyone. I in no circumstance am I gonna believe that you don't know that that's not okay. But for organic, I do have some sympathy, because these platforms are pushing you to use these sounds, and they don't do. There's no disclaimer that I've ever seen from Instagram or TikTok that are like, hey, if you are a brand, you can't use copyrighted sounds. Like they have the copyrighted side of their, or the copyright free side of their library. But I mean, from a I don't know. I mean, maybe the liability isn't on them
Yeah,
and
because it's
whatever,
like when
but
you're a business account, you don't have access to any of that stuff. When you're creators, and obviously if you have a business as a creator account, it's a different story. And like, I think it's weird because to me, the paid side is different because you're directly profiting off of that sound, that music, right?
yeah.
But on the organic side, you're just getting extremely high exposure if it's blowing up.
Yeah. Well,
So to me, it's like, why wouldn't, if it's organic, just let it be. You're gonna be able to profit more off of that, in my opinion.
what, like the music
Yeah.
company or the artist? I mean, the main thing though, I totally understand that argument, and I think honestly, when it comes down to it, like there's probably a decent chunk of artists that maybe don't care, and even if someone does sue on behalf of them, like it's the record labels that are missing out. But the thing is, like in the eyes of the law, it is seen as a commercial channel. Like you're organic, like that is the point. What, even though you're not driving to like a shop now, buy now button at the bottom, like at the end of the day, you're promoting your business, and so it's still seen as that. But going back to the TikTok shop stuff that you were saying, Luke, like I think there's two interesting things and like questions that I've had. One has already been addressed, which is, people have been calling out, like, if you don't have someone that's like on it, like a full-time person running your TikTok shop or like an agency, there's a lot of creators now that will post AI slop, like as like just so clearly AI generated, like
Yeah.
UGC or whatever, not even trying to hide it as
20 knuckles. They've got 20 knuckles in the hand. They've got like, how many knuckles does someone need, you know?
yeah, as a TikTok shop video. And that's like, TikTok shop is such a double-edged sword in my opinion, because like you can get so much volume and momentum, but you can't kind of like put a gate on it. Like you're just gonna inhibit that if you try and like, vet every single person. Like you kind of just want to open up the floodgates. But it's really important now to have someone that can monitor that, because otherwise, you're going to cheapen your brand. And then the other thing too that I've always wondered is, so many TikTok shop videos use copyrighted sounds, even though it's on a creator. And I just have to wonder, like, that can't be technically legal, especially too when you then run GMV behind it. Like I know it came from their account originally, but that's another thing where I'm just like, is this, are only big brands going to be targeted, or is it just going to fly under the radar? But it's kind of interesting how, so much of content is just remixing other things in pop culture. Like it does genuinely feel hard to make something nowadays that isn't technically sort of stealing, someone's copyright. So it's just interesting. Like I'm not sure how people are supposed to navigate it.
But also what I think is interesting as well, if you look at, let's call them kind of like protected industries from a consumer perspective, like gambling, banking, like the really smart brands, and finding that they can get a content creator to say things that they could never say, and then put paid behind it, gives them that kind of degree of separation. They can get the traffic in, get that paid flywheel going, and not. But I think How long will that arbitrage last? I don't know, because they're going to get.
You're still liable, you know,
Yeah, so that's what I
if
mean.
you're
But
putting money behind it. Yeah.
it's such a, this is what I mean. Like, for example, if a
Yeah.
content creator says it compared to a brand, that the brand is liable. But then, as you're saying, when you start scaling that out, you can't look at, I mean, look at Hudson, right? I mean, it's not a protected industry, but from Comfort, right? Their TikTok shop program is nuts. Like, as you said, they just got to let it rip. They can't control that much content. That is a full-time job. Like, that's crazy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the post that I saw about it was mostly just saying, like, look at your top spenders for GMV. Like, if you're getting, tons of videos a day, like, just look at the top spenders and make sure none of those are like AI slop or totally off brand. But it is really tough to moderate.
Of course. I mean, look, Daniel, I mean, me and Carson have been so honored that you've come on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Dude, thanks for having me.
So close that we gotta make something happen or something.
That's ridiculous. Where the hell is my invite? It's not like I'm over the pond in a whole another country. But, I mean, Daniel, first of all, just kind of ending the episode. If people want to kind of follow you, which channel should they come see you at? Is it X? Is it LinkedIn?
Definitely LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where I'm most active.
And I really want to mention that you actually plugged it, but didn't plug it fully. I want you to plug it. You're building Snowball. What's the play there?
Yep. Yeah. I'm just a solo agency that's focused on, building a good foundation with organic content and then kind of leveraging that into paid. So I'm working with 2 clients now, both in the beverage industry. One is Fabric, which is a THC hop water brand, and then the other is Lucky Energy. They're based out in California. So
I love Lucky. Lucky Energy is honestly so much kudos to their team. It's a great story. Do you know the story, Carson?
No, but I got to dip because I got to go to the bank. So I got to go get this stuff sorted. But I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Luke, as always, great. Daniel, great getting to meet you. Nice to know that you're close by. We'll make something happen.
Absolutely.
And to everybody watching, thank you very much. Like, subscribe. We got a good episode coming next week as well. And then I'll be in LA actually. So we got that going.
LA vlog.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for listening and peace. Yeah, let's go.